This video is only possible thanks to viewers like you. To support the channel and get more, go to patreon.com/optimisticduelist and subscribe. Link in the description. At 13, I was in a dark place. Literally. I don't know if it was living on a bottom floor apartment or if depression and anxiety were just skewing my perception, but my memory of my mother's apartment is that it was always too dark, the light always seeming to sputter and fizzle into a dim gray fog. I was finally starting to understand that my attraction to guys wasn't evil, and though I still had constant night terrors about hell and God being real, I had almost entirely thrown off my Catholicism intellectually, but there was nothing to replace it, and at the time I desperately needed something. A lifetime of bouncing from place to place had left me adrift and isolated, and I was trapped in a sexually coercive situation I couldn't talk about for fear that it would lead to my family finding out I was gay. So instead, I just lived. I didn't exactly hate myself, and things never seemed to get quite bad enough that I felt outright suicidal, but I felt constantly barraged on all sides, unsafe and unwanted. I distrusted my family, and I hated my life. I was a functional robot in day-to-day life. I existed only between lines of texts and books and games, and online on forums where I could meet people who cared about them. In the darkness of my despair and isolation, a path out wasn't just invisible, it was unimaginable. But then, at some point, a friend got me to play Earthbound, and in its codes and sprites I found something unexpected. Hope. The promise that the world did not have to be so grim and dark forever. The possibility of a future full of love. Light, brilliant and radiant, with all the fury and glory of the sun. Nothing shone to me quite like Earthbound did, but that has a lot to do with the lens the game has you see it through. All of Earthbound's protagonists are kids who were around my age when I played it. But more important than that, they were all different. Ness is the American everyboy in a game where psychic powers are the strongest attack against an unimaginable foe. But while a powerful attacker, he's also one of the two main healers, an unusually nurturing and caregiving role. And Paula, the American every girl to answer Ness, turns out to be the most versatile early attacker and consistently one of your biggest damage dealers. The only PSI user who doesn't learn any healing magic at all. Both of them bent and eroded the firm ideas of gender and identity being pushed on me, and Pooh is a warrior prince from a different culture. As a cultural expat myself, I could kind of imagine how it must have felt for him, existing between two different worlds. He was a prince on a mission in his world, while I felt more like an exile in mine. But still, the thread was there. But the three of them paled in comparison to Jeff. Though not directly stated to be queer himself, Jeff is closely linked to a canonically gay NPC, Tony. Tony is a schoolmate of Jeff's who's clearly infatuated with him, to the point that he calls you during the game just to speak to him. Tony directly asks the player for their name during his mid-game phone call. And during the final confrontation, when all hope seems lost and the heroes' friendships are what saves them, yours is the final name to show up to help. This blew my little mind in ways that took me years to really understand. A gay kid in a game who was open with his affections and was accepted and valued for it by one of the heroes. It all gave me room to dream and build and room to fill in Jeff and Tony's characters with some of my own. As a shy, nerdy kid myself, it was already easy to like Jeff. It was just inconceivable that a hero would be friends with, let alone maybe even of a kind, with someone like me. But Tony erased that barrier and replaced it with limitless stories made just for me. And tearing down those walls let the other characters in more fully too. Being able to connect to Jeff and Tony so viscerally, being able to know that I was an acknowledged part of this world, let me inhabit it with so much more honesty than I would have done otherwise. And that allowed the game to influence and expand my worldview in a way nothing else could have. These characters served as my gateway to a brand new world. Earthbound is bright, colorful, and welcoming. People are rarely mean or judgmental and always have something funny or interesting to say. It was kind to me at a time when it felt like nothing else was. The world was majestic, and the game makes it a point to have you travel to places of particular wonder and magic. Not RPG magic, but the regular magic that you get in real life when you get to experience something unique and beautiful with people you love. This experience of the world as a place full of sunlight where you could call friends from miles away, where love and togetherness and adventure are your birthright, that was what I took away from Earthbound more than anything. There was no suggestion that these kids needed salvation, no implication that they were bad or flawed. They had insecurities, sometimes they got scared or sad, and they might not always have been at their best, but they were fundamentally good. Jeff introduces himself with self-deprecation, but none of his shortcomings stop him from being a worthy ally and beloved friend to the group. Even without magic, or maybe even heterosexuality, he was intrinsically valuable as far as the game was concerned. Yet, for all of that, the themes of the story might have fallen flat for me if the darkness that lurked around the edges didn't seem so deep. Earthbound's charm works so well because it's set against a background filled with paranoia and fear. There's a reason the game begins with such a foreboding title screen. At the height of 1990s alien conspiracy fascination and hysteria, Earthbound wanted you to keep in mind what's at stake. Ness meets Paulo when she sends out a desperate telepathic plea for him to help her after she's been kidnapped by cultists. Jeff seems not to have a mother and is estranged from his father to the point that he corrects himself when he calls him Dad and instead calls him Dr. Andonuts. Pooh is introduced through a horrific sequence where he meditates on a spirit psychically emulating crushing his limbs, taking his senses, and even killing him. Ness's foil, Pokey, stands for all of the basest elements of humanity throughout the game. Cruel, petty, greedy, willing to hurt others, and interested only in his own power and advantage. Not just him, either. Plenty of people succumb to or embrace the negativity of Gigius's evil power infecting the Earth. And of course, the climactic final battle of the game against Gigas is oft-cited as one of the most disturbing and horrifying in video game history. Even more scary once you realize that the whole thing is essentially a suicide mission, and the kids expected never to be able to return home once they set out to face him. There is overwhelming darkness in Earthbound's world, and it takes immense effort and endurance to overcome. Like in real life, it isn't easy, and it doesn't let up. But that doesn't mean it's not worth it. It doesn't mean it's not beautiful. And Earthbound let me experience the agony, the terror, the despair, and then let me choose to go on anyway. It let me decide that the next pleasant stranger or gorgeous vista would be worth it. And the values of caring for yourself, the world, and the people you love stuck deep. The view of the world as a fundamentally good place where deep tragedy may strike but can always be overcome became my bedrock. And the variety and diversity of the characters not only taught me that it was okay to be who I was, but also gave me a perspective naturally predisposed to find in anyone something worth loving. That faith has filled the contours of my life with joy and meaning. It's kept me steady when my world was in upheaval and pushed me to be the best I can be. It helps me see the best in people and give as much love as I have to give. I trusted Earthbound's light when I had nothing else to trust, and now, while there are still some shadows, that light has grown grossly incandescent. And when things get hard, when I struggle to keep myself and those I love afloat, I remember, once I walked through the valley of the shadow of death. And there, Earthbound found me, and its story and song comforted me and led me through, and that's something I can believe in. Thank you, Shigesato Itoi. There are no words for how much you gave me. And if you've gotten this far into this video, then thank you too, from the bottom of my heart. If you're an Earthbound fan, I hope this reminded you of what you love about it. And if you're not, I hope it gave you a reason to check it out. Especially us Homestucks, because in all honesty, I feel like Homestuck is Earthbound and Mother 3's truest spiritual successor in the modern age, save maybe Homestuck's own spiritual successor in Undertale, which also does a great job of carrying on the spirit of Earthbound. But I've already got a video coming up exploring the parallels between Homestuck and Earthbound, so I'll leave it there for now. With this channel about to break 10,000 subscribers, I've been feeling contemplative and grateful. So I wanted to do something a little more personal. On which note, I also wanted to thank Mammon Machine's ZEAL project, an online games criticism publication that picked up the original version of this Earthbound story you heard right now. That was the first paid work I ever did for anyone looking for my insight on video games, and I can safely say that without that experience, I wouldn't be doing this YouTube channel right now. ZEAL produces incredible games criticism, usually about games you wouldn't see talked about otherwise. And if that sounds interesting to you, I heavily encourage you to check them out. Huge thanks go out to my patrons for making this video possible. If you want to help support the channel and come join us at our awesome and growing Discord community, feel free to join us for as little as $1 a month. You can also find me on the r/Hiveswap Reddit and Discord. That's all for now, so thank you again, and as always, keep rising.